Welcome in, everybody, to our draft recap. It's been about a week since the NFL draft. Let everything digest from the dog pound in Broncos country. Might have to say, maybe out in Broncos country, we're a little more happier because there's a little bit of logic behind what was going on in the draft room and the war room. And they seemed a little bit more happy after each pick.
Hmm.
Interesting
I'm
enough,
gonna interject
Cleveland
here
just
quick.
kind of like
Sean,
sat there and kind of had a damn, here you go, bro, ass type of pick. But
I'm gonna say this quick. It didn't look like the Broncos coach and GM looked like they were about to be fired, like Stefanski and the Browns GM did. So, no offense, Adam. I just
No, none taken. Andrew Berry, I think, is on thin ice. I think Stefanski's safe for a little while. He's won comeback coach of the year, I think, twice now, but we'll dive more into that. But
well, with that being said, we'll start with you, Adam. How you doing? How's it been?
good for the most part. We'll really break down the draft here and how it could have went better. But there's a lot to look forward to in Cleveland. You can never have enough quarterbacks. I mean, fuck it, one of them's got to work out eventually. So. But like I said, we'll dive more into that, but not too much on the home front. Just been same old, same old. Um, I try to watch more UFL football, and there's just something about it. I don't know what it is. I can't find it entertaining to watch. So now I'm watching NBA playoffs are on. Detroit and the Knicks are playing on TV. It's a close game there, but I know you guys are big into hockey. Hockey's going on, so kind of a good transition period right now, as we're still kind of now we're back in the dog days of football. We're waiting on OTAs and training camp and rookie mini camp and all that stuff. So it's a pretty good time right now for sports.
Ethan, what about you? Anything crazy
oh,
going
we're all
on?
good here. Nope, nothing too crazy. Adam, I'll say I think the XFL was probably a little bit more exciting than the UFL. Um, that's just my thoughts on it. Obviously, I do follow DC. I hear what you're saying. They did bounce back last week. Sean and I's Nuggets are kind of confused, but they're wanting. I mean, they're up right now in the series, so we'll see what happens. LeBron bounced last night, and I mean, at the end of the day, that's all I really care about. So, um, no, I'd agree. Like I said, I had to interrupt there a little bit. I felt we could dive into it later with the Browns that they had the look of someone kicked their dog and they're about to be fired. So we'll get into that though. Sean, we'll take it over to you.
Yeah, I think it was a. I think this was an interesting time, as you said, in sports, Adam. It's kind of the best playoffs in the world. The NHL playoffs are now kind of there's a couple teams wrapping up their first rounds, getting into the second round. But talk about dog days. That's coming up here, in a month or so. Once the NBA Finals and Stanley Cup Finals wrap up, all we got is baseball for a month until um, fall camp starts for the NFL and college. But good news is college football 26 comes out. I think that's what July 10th. Super super early. So um, yeah, not much on my side. But as we said, we were talking about the draft. So what do you say we just hop right in here to our? We did a recap over the top 10 teams, what they should be picking. Adam, your team was in the top 10. So just a
Yep.
quick rundown of what the top 10 picks were. So number one was Cam Ward. I don't think there was any surprise there. The Titans were going to take Cam Ward. Um, Number two, Travis Hunter. Again, we talked about that. It wasn't really much of a surprise. We thought he was going to go anywhere between 2 and 10. I mean, I think that was a decent pick for the Jaguars. It gives them uh, offense or defensive threat, depending on where they want to play him. Then you have Abdul Carter to the Giants, Will Campbell to the Patriots, Mason Graham to the Browns, Ashton Jeanty to the Raiders, Ahmad Membu to the Jets, Toria McLennan, or however you pronounce his name, to the Panthers, Kelvin Banks Jr. to the Saints, and Colston Loveland to the Bears. So, Adam, since your team is in the top 10, these top 10 picks, first and foremost, I want to get your initial reaction. Any surprises? Anything any of these teams should have done, traded out of the top 10, traded up in the top 10? What do you think?
I did a little bit of research today, and interesting enough, so that the Browns and Jaguars trade, it was actually set in stone as of April 7th. So multiple weeks before the draft, they kind of had this deal arranged, and they're waiting until draft night, and it was because Andrew Berry, I think Stefanski said, so if Cam Ward was going to fall from one, and if they took Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, whoever it was, then the Browns would have stayed. Then the Browns would have drafted Cam Ward. Um, that definitely would have put us in an interesting position, but I think it worked well out in our favor. I think a lot of people were saying we fleeced the Jags, and I think we did. All we did was swap first and fourth round picks, and then we also got second round pick this year. We got the number 36 pick, and we got the Jags first round pick next year. So quite a bit just to move back 3 spots. Um, I think that was a very well put together trade. It's kind of interesting. Usually we see a lot of moves and some trading stuff happening leading up to the draft, and the fact that nothing happened was definitely a little interesting. I would say my most surprising um, pick from the top 10, I think, would probably be Colston Loveland going at 10. Your favorite guy, Joel Klatt, Sean, he loves Colston Loveland. He says he's better than Tyler Warren, the other tight end out of Penn State. But they could have went a lot of different directions. Obviously, Genty goes at 6, so they can't take him, and they're not going to take a Marion Hampton that high. So they could have went O lineman, but obviously Kelvin Banks went the pick before them at 9. So definitely an interesting move by the Bears picking Colston Loveland. You already have Cole Kmet. Um, and you're going to have a lot of mouths to feed, right? You still have Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Cole Kmet, and now you add Colson Loveland, Ethan. They get your guy Luther Burden, and DeAndre Swift is also a pass catching back. So I think that was, you know, an interesting move. I don't know why they went tight end, um, unless they're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets, but. I think they probably could have traded back maybe for a lineman, or even tried to trade up and get Genty.
Yeah, I think that um, first we'll just say like, yeah, I'm not too surprised with most of the picks in the top 10. But yeah, the Bears pick I thought was interesting. To not even like try to go defense even. Now, granted, there wasn't too many amazing defensive players to go out of the top 10, but I mean, for me, it's you're not just drafting like you're drafting what your team needs. Not let me just. It's not a 5-year-old playing Madden 25. I'm not just trying to pick up what's going to be the coolest, or like if my team doesn't need a tight end, I'm not going to draft a tight end. Um, I don't hate the pick, but I'm kind of with you. I'm not in love with it either with the Chicago Bears. I think overall, though, out of the top 10, like I think all those spots, everybody that got drafted, they needed. Um, speaking of Ashton Genty, I don't. That's a very early 2000s pick there, a running back in the top 10. So that just speaks to how good Ashton Genty was last year in college for somebody to be able to, especially a team like the Raiders, was just kind of like, take your pick. What do you need? And they went with a running back. So I don't hate that pick either, but that's mainly kind of it speaks volumes to how good Ashton Genty really was last year to be able to go in the top 10 like that. That's kind of unheard of nowadays. Running backs kind of go late first round, early second, and on into the second day. But one thing that I thought was interesting was Abdul Carter to the New York Giants. The New York Giants, I think, had a really good draft. I think they did what they, because I mean, you can tell that Brian Dayball is kind of this is it for me. So for once, it kind of felt like they had their head screwed on straight when it comes to drafting. Now, yeah, Kayvon Thibodeau hasn't had the greatest of short careers so far. His rookie year was pretty good, and then it's kind of been a steady. He's been decent from year 2 and 3. But I think having Abdul Carter and him on the defense will help, and I think that was a solid pick to go with there at the number 3 slot. With Travis Hunter, though, like you said when you said they fleeced the Jaguars, that's an interesting take, Adam. I don't disagree with it. Because yeah, the Browns really didn't give anything up. They switched, what is that, 3 spots? I
Yep.
mean, and also with Travis Hunter, where is he going to be a head case when it comes to playing both sides of the football? We've already seen that he's kind of said, like, I want to play both sides of the ball. And what is he going to do when he can't or he won't? Or the coaching staff's like, no, you're not. I saw some that said he was going to change jersey numbers or something when he plays offense versus when he plays defense. And it's like, to me, that's just kind of a, hey, that's a look at me move. Like, what are we doing here? But I think that out of everything that the Jaguars could have drafted, I don't think it was a terrible pick. I mean, they do need offense to be surrounded because I think this is kind of the make or break year for Trevor Lawrence. This is kind of it for him, where it's like you either show us what you got or, we're shutting it down. And next year, hopefully, there's a decent quarterback prospect. I mean, I know Arch Manning might come out, um, although he might go to the Saints. Uh, you know, that pick of Tyler Shuck or whatever his name is that throws like a zesty Morton set was a great pick for them to pick first next year. But I think that the Travis Hunter pick overall wasn't terrible. That could add to the defense. It's just whether or not he's going to be a head case about wanting to play both sides, which I really don't get. Like why he's just all over that. Like, just let it go. You're in the NFL. Do what you need to do and get out. Now, I will say this: the defensive tackle Mason Graham to the Browns. Adam, this pick I don't hate at all. At first, I was like a defensive tackle, but then I thought about you just re-signed Miles Garrett. Now you just bolster
Yep.
the defensive line a little bit more. It takes a little bit of pressure off of Miles Garrett. The defensive backfield is still decently intact, because that's one thing I always thought that Cleveland had was a strong defensive backfield. And
Yep.
what was that, 2 years ago when they went to the playoffs? They had it was for what, the first 5 or 6 weeks they had the best defense in the league,
Yeah.
and now they're just bolstering that. And we'll get into a Broncos country because you aren't safe either. But defense wins championships, offense wins games, defense wins championships, and you need to keep your defenses bolstered. So, Ethan, what do you think of these top 10 picks? Anything that stood out to you? Any surprises? To me, like I said, there really wasn't too many surprises. There wasn't like a wow, Ashton Genty fell to 10 or anything like that.
No, I'll start out by saying obviously Sean, our boy, went number one. I wish him nothing but the best. I hope obviously he succeeds. It's pretty cool. Obviously, when undrafted, be getting Xavier Restrepo, and then did get some wide receiver picks, so they're trying there. It's very clear, like, hey, we're getting who we think our guy can be, and then we're going to try to surround him with talent. So that's good to see. Obviously, good luck to him if he does well. I'll get a Cam Ward jersey. Um, no, kind of thinking about it. 10 or at pick 10, yeah, Colson Loveland. I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad player. That was kind of a surprise. I work with a guy who's a Bears fan, and we watched kind of their review on it from inside the Bears organization. He fits with what they want to do. So, um, he's that kind of like Jimmy Graham, type of tight end where you can line him up at wide receiver. Adam, sorry to correct you. They don't have Keenan Allen anymore. He's no longer there. But
That is my bad. Is he? Did he sign with any team?
not that I know of. I'd have to double check on that. I just looked at the free agency here not too long ago, and I don't believe so.
Nope.
Um,
Still a free
he,
agent.
he is kind of at that unk status right now, so whatever. But I'd agree. Mason Graham to the Browns. That does make sense. You put on his tape, and he's doing nothing but just plugging gaps, hitting backs in the backfield, throwing around the USC center, making him go airborne.
I
Getting so. I
think that
mean,
sounds like an All-American too for
yeah,
USC, a great center or something.
yeah, a little bit of a surprise for me. Not that it was a bad pick. Was Kevin Banks to the Saints? I mean, obviously you want to build up front. They have a lot of needs, and having a good O line and a good D line, that's not going to hurt you in any way, shape, or form. Banks was a very good player. I think that fits them well. It was a little bit of a surprise. I mean, obviously, I thought they'd kind of fall into the media trap of, hey, let's get Shadur Sanders. No, I agree, Sean, with Travis Hunter, though, with the Jags. It was kind of a, we need just take the best available. That's what they did. Overall, a lot of people consider him the best player in the draft. I mean, I'm indifferent. He's a good athlete. He's an average receiver and an average defensive back. That's just my opinion of him. Not saying he's a bad player. Just I thought Tedero McMillan was a better receiver. Um, piggybacking off that, Tedero McMillan going to the Panthers, I think that'll work out. I thought the Panthers had a good draft, pairing him with what they have already to help out that system they have and get their quarterback going in the right direction. I'll say this before I wrap up my thoughts on the top 10. The glazing of Shedeur Sanders was just absolutely wild.
Oh, we'll get into it.
Absolutely wild.
We'll get into it.
Um,
We
it,
gotta.
it reminded me of, I'm just going to say this and then just a little sneak peek, and reminded me of when Manziel was drafted. Teams that clearly don't need him, and they're sitting there, oh, well, this would be a great pick. Sean, we remember watching that back. It was after the Bears re-signed Cutler to that big contract at the time, and them being upset because the Bears didn't draft Manziel. It's like, yeah, no kidding. But anyway, I digress. That, like I said, I'm not going to ramble on. Obviously, good luck to Cam Ward. The Browns, I thought early on made good picks. Later on, we can take a dive into the toilet bowl. But
Yeah,
anyway, Sean.
I think that and even with Cam Ward going number one overall, to me there was just really no surprise going into the draft. A lot of he was the most prepared in all draft meetings. He was very professional. He was ready to go for everything. He was on time. His pro day, I read something that he was early to absolutely everything. He made sure he was ready to go to show that, like, hey, I'm taking this serious. I want to be in the NFL. But what a story for Cam Ward, going from a 0-star recruit and then what is Incarnate Word? Is that like a D2? That's a D2, D3? I think it's a D2 in Texas, and then able to go to Washington State. I remember driving back from Nebraska on Thanksgiving, listening to the Apple Cup on the radio, and Cam Ward going just trading blows with Michael Penix in the last ever Apple Cup, and that's kind of when I first was introduced to Cam Ward. And then I saw he went to Miami, and last year what he did in Miami, that's pretty insane. So I think even if he would have left Washington State, he would have gone to the NFL, but it wouldn't have been as high as he was. So taking that extra year to go to Miami showcase what he really has. And I mean, even when he went to Miami, everything I heard was like from day one when he stepped on campus, he took over and showed that he was a leader. So I think that was a great pick. And yeah, getting Xavier Restrepo by the Titans doing that is it's a familiar face for him coming in. So that way, obviously, it's probably going to be pretty daunting in the NFL for him. That familiar face might help out a little bit. So I think that's a good pickup. And yeah, I agree. I think the Titans are actually like trying for once. They're not just like trading everybody away and firing their coach for absolutely zero reason.
Because they drafted what, two receivers that if I'm remembering correctly, the guy from Stanford, and there might have been another one,
Mhm.
and then obviously the undrafted with Restrepo. I mean, it remains to be seen if it works out, but like you said, just that initial like, hey, I know this guy. This was my guy at the
Mhm.
U.
Yep. But with that being said, since, like I said, Adam, the Browns were within the top 10, we'll let you, we'll give you the red carpet here. What is your reaction of the 2025 Cleveland Browns NFL draft?
It was looking good. The draft was looking really good. Um, Overall grade, I still think they probably get a B, um, B minus at worst. Really, if you take out that Dylan Gabriel pick, then this draft is a home run. This is probably one of the best drafts that Andrew Berry has ever had in his career. Um, fifth overall, we get Mason Graham, 6'3", 300 pounds. I mean, this guy has everything you want. Best D tackle in the draft, AP All American, first team All Big Ten, finalist for Nation Top Defender Award. This past season, 45 tackles, 7 tackle for loss, 3.5 sack. Um, he has everything you're looking for in a D tackle, and it's not one of those sexy picks, kind of like taking an O lineman and a D lineman. But he's a guy who's going to come and start day one. Um, Injury to our second round pick last year, Mike Hall, out of Ohio State. So this gives them depth on the D line, and essentially you can shut down about one half of the defensive line right there with Miles Garrett and Mason Graham. So. I think this is a great pick. I think he's going to fit in the culture of Cleveland very well. Um, Only thing that people say about him is he does have kind of small arms for a defensive tackle, so and he doesn't have really a solid move to get past guys who are a lot bigger and lengthier than he is. But um, his power and speed. He's a former wrestler. I mean, what's not to love about a Mason Graham? I think he'll fit in just fine. Um, Moving on to the second round. So we had the first pick of the second round. We get Carson Schlesinger, linebacker out of UCLA. This guy was a walk-on, 0-star recruit, obviously, and then he played on. He was just a reservist in special teams 2 years ago, but this past year, in his real first year of football, first team AP All American, first team All 10 Big Conference, finalist for the Buckus Award, led the FBS with 90 solo tackles, and ranked third overall with 136. Team captain, played in all 12 games, um, 4 sacks, 2 picks. Um, I think this guy's going to another great fit. Um, Obviously, we know that, as you said, Sean, defense wins championships. So this guy, he uh, was the overall number one linebacker ranking from the combine as far as athleticism and production score. Um, he didn't run any 40 times or anything like that, but he did get 20 reps on the bench press. So I think this is going to be a great pick. Um, Good body control, very agile. Uh, but I think it'll be a really good pick for them. And then the draft pick that we got from the Jaguars, we took Quinshon Judkins. I think probably the second best running back in the draft. I think he's better than Omarion Hampton, which I think it was kind of high for him going in the first round. But 6 foot, 221, 4.4 speed, 11-foot broad jump. Um, a lot of people, even myself at times, we talk about how Travion Henderson was a better running back than Quinshon Judkins. And that's just because if you go back and look at the tape at Ohio State, Travion was getting all the, he was more of the pass catching back. Quishon was the um, between the tackles, first and second down type of guy. And a lot of people forget about this guy. He was at Ole Miss. He was a freshman All American, first time All SEC. He was the SEC Freshman of the Year. And then again at Ole Miss the following year, first team All SEC. And then this past year, he was third team All Big Ten Conference, had 1,000 yards, 14 rushing touchdowns. And you remember he had the remarkable national championship game against Notre Dame. So I think he has the potential to come in and start day one over Jerome Ford. It's going to be a very competitive backfield with another one of the picks that we'll get into a little bit later. But I love this pick. Stays in the state of Ohio, and I think he's going to be a great running back for the Browns going forward. Moving on to the third round, this is probably my favorite pick of the draft. Harold Fannin Jr., tight end out of the Bowling Green University. This guy's from Canton, Ohio. So he's literally half an hour up the road from where my family's from. He played at McKinley High School, which we used to play them in basketball. 6'3", 240, led the nation in receiving yards and receptions. First team All American, MAC Player of the Year. Um, Finalist for the John Mackey Award, had over 1,500 receiving yards, 117 receptions, and he played all over the field. A lot of people compare him to a bigger Debo Samuel. So I expect Kevin Stefanski to start running a lot of, more two tight end, two running back sets with these guys. Njoku's deal expires next year. So if they don't want to re-sign him, I think this guy will be a great option to take over that David Njoku role. But by far one of my favorite picks of the draft was Harold Fannin Jr. Then we go to the fourth round. Or sorry, this is still the third round. Dylan Gabriel. This is where the draft the train got off its tracks here a little bit with Dylan Gabriel. 5'11", 205, played 16 years in college. Started at UCF, went to Oklahoma, and then went to Oregon, obviously. He's projected a fourth to fifth round pick. Obviously, we know he's a smaller guy. He lacks size. 25% of his passes this past year were behind the line of scrimmage. Average quickness, sits on intermediate targets too long, lazy ball placement and accuracy, lacks the arm strength. I really don't know what Cleveland was thinking when they took Dylan Gabriel. A little fun fact: the last quarterback to win a Super Bowl that was 5'11" was Russell Wilson. But obviously, we want someone that's a little bit taller than 5'11". So they're I don't know if he just crushed their pre-draft interviews or they really like the guy. I don't know what they were seeing. I think this is probably an F pick. He would have been there way later in the draft. I think there's no need to take him in the third round. I really don't understand this one. Um, and then next pick we had was Dylan Sampson, running back out of Tennessee, who didn't play for the playoff game versus Ohio State. I think this is another home run pick. Great value, him going in the fifth or sixth round. Um, this guy was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year this past year. First team All SEC running back for all purpose. Had a school record 22 rushing touchdowns. Ranked eighth in the nation with 132 points scored. He started all 13 games. So the value on this pick, and they didn't project it as a second to third round pick, is comparison is Brian Westbrook. I think the value behind this pick is amazing. He's a little bit of a smaller guy. He's 5'8", 200. So I think if you put him with Quinshon Judkins and Jerome Ford, I think you have a really solid um, backfield there. Uh, and then we'll move on to obviously what we have as the hot button topic for the Cleveland Browns was the Shador Sanders sliding all the way to the fifth round.
Before
I know
you
you
get
guys
into it,
saw the
Adam,
video.
before you get into it, do you
Oh,
want to
go ahead.
wait?
Go ahead.
Do you want to wait for our
We'll
segment on Shooter Sanders, or do you want to just let her rip?
I'll simmer on it for a little bit. How
All right,
about
it's
that?
up to you. If you want to let her rip, send it because
We'll
it
put
is
it
your
on the
team.
back burner. We'll put it on the back burner.
All right.
So you're saying the turd slid down the bowl? That's what you're saying.
So, hey, Shedeur Sanders is leading the rookies among jersey sales, which I don't know how he's doing that because they don't even have their numbers yet. And I watched a video of the Browns. They brought in some of the rookies to pick their numbers, and the first number that Quinshon Judkins said he wanted was 2. So, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work out, but
You think he power moved him there?
probably he was like 2 or 1. That's what I want. It's like, all right, that's what you want. So I don't know. I'm
Well,
sure
didn't
Dion
Quinshon
will.
Judkins wear two at Ohio State?
He wore 1.
He wore one.
He wore 1. I don't know. I don't know. Players get very. I mean, you guys know. I don't know because I never played it. Well, I played basketball and it's not as big a deal, but football picking your number is a pretty big deal. I'm sure it was. You got to get like the swaggiest number. You know, you can't be like a linebacker wearing like 72 or some egregious number like that. You got to get a good number to look good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll. That's all I got. I think besides the Dylan Gabriel pick, this was a very solid draft for the Cleveland Browns. We have 9 picks in next year's draft as well. So, and I tell people all this time that I work with, like the Browns are not far off at all. People have their projected mocks for next year, Cleveland being the number 1 overall pick, them being 2-15, 3-14. I don't see it. This team had a lot of injuries last year. The offensive line was bad, but everyone's back now. Joel Batonio, Wyatt Teller, Jack Conklin, like Dewan Jones. The line's going to be healthy. We're going to have competent quarterback play. And we can talk about the depth chart and the 16 quarterbacks they have on their roster. But
So to say, I think you're talking about Flacco, right?
yeah, I think Flacco will be the day 1 starter. But here's the thing, right? And we'll talk more about it. Shador has the opportunity to go into the rookie mini camp and the offseason and OTAs and all that. He has the opportunity to be the day 1 starting quarterback. If he truly blows these guys out of the water and Deshaun Watson's not playing, Kenny Pickett is a terrible quarterback. Dylan Gabriel's 5'11". You know, Deshaun's not playing, and it's like the competition isn't there. I feel Stefanski would lean towards Flacco just because Cleveland does like him and the experience is there. And he's your type of quarterback. He's a gunslinger. He's going to throw it for 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks probably. But I think Kevin will probably lean on the experience. I think he'll Shador will probably get a chance midway through the season. You know, if the Browns are 3-5 or 4-4 and they want to make a run, I think they'll probably turn to him.
Yeah, I think people forget that the Browns were a playoff team 2 years ago. I mean, last year it's just kind of like the proverbial wheels fell off for reasons unknown. Even when everybody was hurt, they had a decent roster, and I mean, and they're also in one of the harder divisions. You have the Ravens, you have the Bengals, and then you have the Steelers, who always go. They're above 500 team every year. So I mean, that's a really hard division to play football in. And I think that the Browns did a decent, yeah, they lost quite a few games, but they did a decent amount of damage control. I mean, even with Jameis Winston stepping in and playing, and I mean, look what that Monday night game against Denver. I mean, the Broncos, Riley Moscow's down. They had to go to, the 5 Points Mall and find some dude selling cell phones at a kiosk to come in and play freaking defensive back for him. And Jerry Judy goes off. So I think that the Browns are tooled enough to make a run at that division because I think the Bengals just can't. I like Joe Burrow. I like the Bengals. I like Jamar Chase, but I feel like that's a team that just can't get out of their own way for whatever reason. They take 5 steps forward to take 10 back, and then the Steelers, like I don't know what is going on in there. If like Mike Tomlin ever plans on winning a playoff game, or if he's just down with going just barely above 500 and then getting destroyed in the playoffs. But I think they have a chance to really compete with the Ravens because again, 2 years ago they split with the Ravens. So
Yep.
uh, that was huge for them in their push for the playoffs. And for the first, what was that, quarter and a half of that, maybe first quarter of that Texans game, they were in it. You could just tell though that the they ran out of gas in that game. The talent level of Houston compared to Cleveland at that point of the year with injuries and whatnot just kind of took over. But making it to the playoffs and being competitive for the first little bit there, that's very promising for a Browns fan, I would say, considering that what the Browns have been since coming back to Cleveland. Um, and I mean, Ethan and I know this is like last year when the Broncos got absolutely swept out of the playoffs. I was fine with that. The Broncos in the last 10 years haven't even sniffed the playoffs. A year ago or 2 years ago with Russell Wilson, they were right there, but they just couldn't seem to get over the last hurdle. But I think that in the coming years, the Browns will be good.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that division. Obviously, the Ravens are going to be good.
Mhm.
Cincinnati, as you say, Sean, they can't stop a nosebleed. I hated their first round pick in Shamar Stewart. I get it, this guy's like an athletic freak, but in 37 games over 3 seasons, he's had 4.5 sacks. That's just you can't explain it. I mean, 37 games and he has 4.5 sacks.
I'd
So
heard with that guy, they said, oh, well, in college, there's a lot of RPO and this and that. I'm like, you look at other guys who even went later in the draft, they put up good numbers in college. It's like, what's his excuse?
yeah, Mike Green from Marshall and
Mm-hmm.
Abdul Carter, I think had 11 or 12 this year. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Cincinnati has no defense. Pittsburgh still has no quarterback. They have Mason Rudolph and Will Howard, and I love Will Howard, but Mason Rudolph is not a franchise quarterback, and who knows if they're getting Aaron Rodgers or not. So I think yeah, it's going to be a very competitive division, but the Browns definitely can make a run for. Ideally, realistically, I think probably second place in that division, and I think probably 10-7, 11-6 gets you a playoff spot.
Well, with the Browns, pretty much, I mean, it'll be interesting going into minicamp, like you said, at the quarterback position. But another team that I think personally, so first off, I want to say this. I don't like draft grades because we don't, like, how am I going to know? There's just a level of talent from Power Five to Group of Five, depending on where you picked. It's all over the board. But our team, the Denver Broncos, if I had to give them a draft grade, it would be in the A's. I don't know why. I saw someone said it was like a C plus, and yeah, well, why didn't? Listening to Bronco fans is just crazy. The first round pick, Ethan. We can go back and forth on this. Jade Barron out of Texas. I loved the pick. I don't know why everyone was surprised that they drafted a defensive back. Like I said, you went to the 5 Points Mall and hired a dude off of a cell phone kiosk to cover Jerry Judy on that Monday night game. when Riley Moss was down. And to be honest, I think Riley Moss, as we saw, especially down the stretch in the season, is not an outside guy. That Bengals game, he got absolutely just used. You put him in the slot. Now you have um, Jade Barron and Patrick Surtain on the outside. I think that's a huge upgrade at the defensive back position, and that was something that they needed was an upgraded defensive back. So I don't know why that was such a big surprise. Like I don't like why if you told me Amari Hampton or Barron out of Texas, I would say defensive back 100%. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this first round pick of the Broncos?
I liked it. Like you said, he was, I believe, it was an all SEC first team.
Mm-hmm.
Correct me if I'm wrong on that. He, some of the Texas games I watched, it was like they'd go his way and there'd be a pass deflection, or I remember him picking off a couple balls. Great pick, like you said. I mean, Riley Moss, he's not a terrible player. It's just I don't think he's meant to be on the outside. He's athletic enough, I think, to be on the field, but he can't, cover the backside of a T. Higgins or even when a Jamar Chase comes over. Barron, I think, will fit that a little bit better. I would guess probably right away he may start out inside just to kind of take a lot of the pressure off of him. I would expect some growing pains. Obviously, defensive back, you see it quite a bit, how they'll struggle right away, but you're going from covering, guys who are going to be throwing fries in the bag for you. And like once you're done at the game, you're going over to McDonald's afterwards to covering like actual guys whose job it is to run routes and catch touchdowns. No, I was a big fan of it. Obviously the school he comes from, Sean and I we can't do it, but no, it's just, I think defense wins championships. It's good to build that. I had said before, with offensive players in the first round, if you're not getting Genty, then don't go defense, and they did exactly that. And we can get into their later picks. Obviously, getting RJ Harvey, I'm very high on that. Hopefully, he works out there. So, Sean, what are your thoughts on Barron?
I think that this is huge. Looking back at their 3 Super Bowl wins in '97, they were like the 6th best defense. '98, they were, I think it was they were top 10. I think it was 5 or 7, between 5 and 7. And then in 2015, they were the 4th best defense. So they were a top 5 defense in 2015. Um, in yes, in '98, I think they had the best offense in the league way back then. And then '97, I think they had the second or third. But if you look back at 2015 and you look back at what was left of Peyton Manning and that offense, it was basically turn around and hand off to CJ Anderson and kind of just
throw to Jacob Tamme over the middle.
Yeah, it wasn't much. There wasn't much left of Peyton Manning at that point, and that defense carried him. Last year, when the offense, because I don't think the offense is the problem in Denver. They were finally putting up 28 plus points for the first time in 10 years. That's crazy to watch that, especially that much.
We're Broncos fans. We didn't think there's anything over 10. I didn't think numbers went higher than that in football.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it's just so being able to have a defense. I mean, think about that Monday night game against Cleveland. I always go back to that one just because how much Jerry Jeudy destroyed the Broncos defense. Some of those drives, instead of a deep play that set up a touchdown, you stop them. That game ends in the third quarter. And granted, yes, the pick six ended up sealing the game. But at that point, you already given up, what was it, 36 points and over 500 yards? 300 of it was between Jameis Winston and Jerry Jeudy. So this is huge. And
if you can mitigate it even down 2 of those drives in that game, if one is a field goal and one you stop them, it's that's your win. That's ahead. You're coming out ahead.
Well, and look at there's 2 teams in their division they got to compete with right now. Sorry, Raiders fans, I can't get behind you, and I still think your team is cheeks. But
I'll say this: I do like Pete Carroll, but I don't. Yeah, I can't get behind the Raiders.
They're not going to be good. I don't think. As I say that, they're going to go undefeated and win the Super Bowl. But you have to compete against Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes within your division. So there's 4 games right there where you're going to have to be able to cover the pass. I get John Harbaugh loves running the football, but you still have Justin Herbert in LA. And then obviously the Chiefs, they love to throw the football. So, regardless whoever they have at wide receiver, they always seem to find a way to push the ball downfield. And that's within your division. not to mention within the AFC as a whole, because the teams you have to compete with, you have the Bills. The Bills love to push the ball down the field. The Ravens. Not only do you have Lamar Jackson can use his feet, but now last year he proved that he can throw the football as well. These are those teams you're going to have to beat if you want to compete for a Super Bowl. The Baltimores of the world, the Buffaloes of the world. And I mean, I would even start throwing Houston in there. I think Houston's on the rise with CJ Stroud. You know, they have really good pass game. So this is an
Our
amazing.
boy Cam Ward too. Don't forget about him. The Titans.
Yeah, and if the Titans come out of nowhere, right? Like you're gonna, because I guarantee you, I bet Cam Ward's gonna be throwing the ball 30 plus times a game to start,
Oh yeah.
especially if he's showing that he can do it. So, I think that this is what they needed to do defensively. And like I said, their weakest point last year, I mean, I'll go back to it. Last year when I saw they were the worst rated roster in the NFL going into the season, I was like, there's no way the Broncos did that. I pulled up their defense and I literally could not. I didn't recognize a single person on that defense. Outside of a few guys, Cooper, um, Patrick Surtain, obviously. How can you not recognize him? And but other than that, I was like, who are these guys? And now this year, I think they've really improved on that. And Ethan, you kind of touched on it. That second round pick with the running back out of Central Florida, RJ Harvey. This was one where. Um, Again, Bronco fans wondering like why did the Broncos just drafted another they did have another small running back. Well, not every running back is 6'3", 270 like Derrick Henry. Most running backs are like 6 foot or below. They're not big, tall. Like I didn't get that take. I was like,
He's a dual threat back. When I
yeah,
say dual threat, I mean he's good at catching passes out of the backfield and he's a runner. Historically, what is Sean Payton like for running backs?
yeah. Alvin
I
Kamara,
mean,
Reggie Bush.
yep. I'm not obviously it's yet to be seen if he turns into those guys, but I mean, as of right now, it's like at least on paper, that's what you're getting.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't get what like this. You know, like, and this is the other. Like I get sometimes. People get caught up in the whole 5-year-old playing Madden, but if you don't need a certain person, why would you just draft them just to say you drafted them? If, for example, let's say the Jaguars
People
had,
still love Linda, like the Bears.
yeah, like if let's say the Jaguars had they say they had an all pro wide receiver and a decent second option and two all pro corners. Why would you draft Travis Hunter? There's just no like where is he going to fit in? Is it just because like oh well he's amazing, he's a great player? Well, we already have people here. What is the point of if you don't need him, don't take him? Because that's something that we've seen the Broncos do in the past. Something, Adam, as the Browns, they do. Like, oh, right now they're the greatest. Right now they're the best on the board. But yeah, but you don't. Now you've drafted this and it just sits there. Um, and I think the thing with with Bronco fans is, for whatever reason, they were so delusional that the Broncos were going to trade up for Ashton Genty, and I'm so glad they didn't. Not that I didn't want them to get Ashton Genty; it's what you would have had to give up to get to Ashton Genty. Would have it trust the rebuild, hold on to your dang draft picks. You already gave up some and some money to get the coach. We've already seen how bad it is to trade draft picks for assets. As much of a Russell Wilson fan I was, right? He's not there now. And you kind of lost all of that. So don't trade up. Don't. This is, I think, a solid pick at running back. And again, like I said, not all running backs are going to be 6'3", 6'4", 250 pounds. Most of them are like just your average height between 5'8" and 6 foot. And like, I don't know, Adam, what I don't know any Cleveland Brown running backs that are like 6'10". I mean,
Nope.
I just don't. I don't know. I don't get what the hate is behind that pick. I think Ethan, I agree with you that dual threat is going to be huge, especially in later down situations where if Bo Nix has to roll through his progression, he knows he can at least dump it off to a running back, and RJ Harvey gives you that. And also, he's not going to be the only guy playing. Like it's going to be running back by committee. That's just kind of the league now. Um, but
People forget they do still have Audric Estime. He's a bigger back.
hmm yeah, And then rolling into this third pick, I also really like Pat Bryant, wide receiver out of Illinois. Ethan,
Yes. Oh yeah.
uh, Big Ten guy, Adam. And he had a huge year
Yep.
last year. Illinois and in general had a huge year a year ago, turning, kind of turning the page and turning the corner in their football program. But this is that draft pick. I don't know why everybody keeps saying like we need to find our Joker, like, Nikola Jokic. And it's like, just first off, that's just like kind of corny. Shut up. Second of all, like,
Can I say it though? You got it. You have Patrick Surtain. Like,
yeah, or Bo Nix,
right.
the biggest draft steal in my opinion so far. Um,
Mm-hmm.
But Pat Bryant, I like this pick. They needed a wide receiver to couple along with Cortland Sutton and what they got going on there. Um, what does this mean for Marvin Mims? You're probably going to be forever a slot wide receiver. You're fast. You're a smaller guy. You're kind of that Wes Welker type of player. Very athletic. Gets into the nitty gritty parts of the field and catches dirty passes. It just is what it is for him. But Ethan, what are your thoughts on this Pat Bryant pick?
Well, obviously, I've said it before. You hope he works out. I said it though. I felt that like the mid to later round wide receivers and running backs in this draft was very talented. Obviously, like the Luther Burdens, the Pat Bryants of the world going later. He's excuse me. He's what, about 6'2", 6 foot to 6'2". He's not, a smaller guy by any means. He watching Illinois last year, they cooked Nebraska. I believe he was the one that caught the touchdown right at halftime. Was he not?
I think so.
What I
Mhm.
know about him is he's a good jump ball guy. So it's like, well, if you pair that with um, Cortland Sutton, Cortland Sutton's a jump ball receiver. You just have two big athletic guys on the outside that can go up and get it. He's a good route runner. Watching, obviously, Big Ten. I didn't watch a ton of Illinois games, but when I did last year, he was Luke Altmaier's like number one. Their number two receiver is also pretty solid. So he was just the first progression, at least from what I saw. Um, and then, like you said, if obviously it works out, him and Sutton, and then Marvin Mims is a slot receiver, which is not a bad thing either. Mims is another guy that I saw last year. They'd use him out of the backfield. They try to use reverses with him, so he's an athletic guy. It's like he's just a weapon, which is completely good to have, in my opinion. I like those types of guys on your team where, yeah, you're my slot receiver, but I can also put you in the backfield and hand the ball off to you if need be, or run a screen with you, or run a reverse, do something creative. So it's just good to see that. You think back to um, Sean Payton with the Saints, he had a pretty diverse receiving core, especially that year they won the Super Bowl. It wasn't necessarily a bunch of like extremely like huge household names, but it was guys who were productive and get the job done. And you had a rock star quarterback and a running back by committee. It was what, Pierre Thomas and Reggie Bush.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then their defense was pretty solid. Obviously, they were getting paid to go out and hit people, but whatever, it worked. Um, No, I like it though. Like I said, hopefully this works out. He was a good player in college. Um, like I said, it was a deep draft at receiver, so I think anywhere they went. I said I liked Luther Burden, but he would have been more of a kind of a comparable to Marvin Mims. He's a smaller, more athletic guy, and I think he'll fit with Chicago if he, obviously everything works out for him. But those are my 2 cents on Pat Bryant.
Yeah, I think, and as we roll down the draft board here, these next two picks, because after these next two picks, it just kind of goes into those late picks where the picks are kind of flying off the board. But they got Slavin Jones, an edge rusher, and then they got Quay Robinson, also another edge. I think this was huge. Again, go back defense. Um,
Depth.
when
They
you
need depth
look
at pass rush.
when you look at that Super Bowl team, their edge rushers were Demarcus Ware and Von Miller. Um, so
You say that out loud, and I forgot how cool that was.
yeah, and again, right, like this is huge. With Nick Bonito and Cooper being their edges right now. Um, like you said, this is not only depth, but maybe one of these guys comes in the camp and they turn out like, well, they're not the greatest edge, but they're a better linebacker. I think these are great picks for them. They need to.
Or it's a Nick Bonito situation where he necessarily isn't the greatest right away. He's just kind of a depth guy in special teams, and he works his way into being
Mhm.
a guy later here in a couple of years.
And the big again, right? When you look back at this division, you have the Chargers and the Chiefs. What's going to win games against these two teams? Getting in the backfield, especially the Chargers. Yeah, they run the football quite a bit, so yeah, you definitely got to be in the backfield. But the Chiefs, you saw the recipe for success in the Super Bowl: be in the backfield on Patrick Mahomes. Think about even back in with Tom Brady, the Super Bowls that Tom Brady lost was the recipe for success for the Giants and the Eagles. Get in the backfield, be in his face. So how are you going to beat the Chiefs? How are you going to beat the Chargers? How are you going to beat the Bills? How are you going to beat the Ravens? How are you going to beat the Texans? How are you going to beat these teams? Is the Bengals is get in these superstar quarterbacks' face. And I think that these are great picks for them. I'm glad that they went heavy on the defensive side of the football, considering that was kind of a shortcoming last year. In the games that they lost, it was defensively, it was like it just wasn't quite enough. And I mean, I kind of got the feeling last year's all or nothing. Either their defense was playing like they were a top 10 defense in the league, or they were playing like it was the Mike Shanahan era, where it was like a bend, don't break, and let's hope that they can force a field goal inside the red zone. So I don't know. I think that this was two great picks for them. Add depth, get two more guys that were well established in college. They're SEC guys, so they played NFL talent quite a bit. I don't know, Ethan. I think the Broncos overall had a good draft. Like I said, obviously after this, the picks kind of just flew off the board. But what are your thoughts on these edge rushers before I get my closing thoughts here on the Broncos?
Like I said, it's depth. If it ends up being, a Jonathan Cooper, Nick Benito situation where they, start on a practice squad or they're backups and they kind of work their way into a role later on, um, you know, here in a year or two, obviously Nick Benito, I think, is their number one pass rusher right now. But I mean, if for some reason they can't resign him or something like that, and one of these guys ends up stepping up, or obviously fingers crossed, both, um, you hope obviously all these guys Denver took, they end up working out would be ideal. But depth, that's a big thing. Look at their pass rush when they won the Super Bowl too. Is Von Miller and Demarcus Ware, and then I mean he didn't end up becoming like the guy at all. But Shane Ray, I remember coming in once in a while and making a play here and there. So even if one of these guys ends up becoming a productive third pass rusher, I think people seem to forget. Yeah, you want good pass rushers, but you want a guy to kind of come in and spell them too. So a little bit of a mix up, and you know, Cooper comes out. It'd be good to have one of the guys come in, and Benito comes out for a play or two here and there. It's like, hey, I can have a guy who can come in and at least hold an edge or make a play if need be.
Definitely. My last closing, we'll close out here on the Broncos. Their seventh round pick was a tight end. The reason
Basketball player.
I want to say this. He had four catches for four touchdowns last year. Now, granted, Utah had quarterback troubles last year, and Utah just had troubles in general in the football program. So, as far as like consistency, as I close this out, I just want to say that's not to me like is a seven. You spent a seventh round pick on him. He's going to be getting the DJ Ungalalele $3,000 signing bonus. So like, welcome to the real world, DJ. That's what the rest of us have to live with. But I think that that wasn't terrible for them. Like they needed a tight end, and I mean, look at Antonio Gates, look at Jimmy Graham, prior primarily basketball players at their respected colleges. Before I mean, obviously Jimmy did play football for the U, but I'm not saying this guy's going to come out and be an Antonio Gates, but they needed a tight end, and I mean, he was on the board. Why not take him? I don't, Bronco country, I don't get the hate behind this. Oh, he only had four catches for four touchdowns. Well, Utah only had four catches for four touchdowns last year. So, I mean,
I'll say this: he'll probably end up in the UFL anyway. I mean, I don't mean to be rude, but that's just the
mhm.
reality of it. Most of these guys probably won't work out. I mean, you hope they do. Obviously, being a former player myself, I don't want to bad mouth it too much unless you're Shadur and you're just over the top. No offense, Adam. That's just the reality of these later picks. A lot of them aren't going to work out, or they're going to be in the UFL here in the next year or two. So, like you said, Sean, it's like, what's the hate for? You probably won't be hearing this guy's name anyway, so don't even worry about it.
I hope he works out. He's 6'7", 256. Like I
Yeah,
said,
he's a big ass dude.
he played basketball all 4 years. He was explosive. Like you said, 4 touchdowns on 4 catches, only 57 snaps of football in his career. But I mean, who's your guys' starting tight end? Troutman, right? Adam Troutman. So it's like it wouldn't
Diarrhea.
be hard for him to, cement himself some snaps going forward into the season.
Hmm. Well,
He's a very raw talent.
and if you look back, if you think about Sean Payton's Super Bowl, their tight end was Jeremy Shockey, a very effective tight end. So, and then he had Jimmy Graham in the system. So, when Sean Payton was most successful, he had a solid tight end. So whoever it is, because Troutman, yeah, was just one of his homeboys from New Orleans, and anyone who knows that corny ass saying who knows ball, that's to me, that's just like the first off, that's like the
My
go-to.
all.
Yeah, that's like the go-to like comeback in the comment section. If you already been backed in a corner. Oh, you just don't know ball. All right, dude, shut up. You suck. But he sucked in New Orleans, and he had like what less than 20 targets last year, and he was just trash for Denver. So, I mean, they needed a tight end, and why not just what else is Denver gonna take at 7? What else are they going to take? He was there. Screw it. If he works out, you got another Antonio Gates. If he doesn't, Ethan, like you said, he'll be in the UFL for the Memphis Steamboats, and they'll probably sign another tight end. And I mean, they just signed a tight end in the offseason. So granted, yeah, he's 30, but come on.
He's a receiving threat.
Yeah. Well, with that, the draft, there was quite a bit of drama with the draft. First off, like I said, I did mention DJ Ungalala. He gets undrafted free agent to the Chargers for a $3,000 signing bonus. He was probably kind of like he probably thought he was getting prank called, but honestly, good for him. Good for him. I always thought DJ Ugabaduga. I don't know why he went to Florida State. He didn't put up amazing numbers at Oregon State. He kind of put up your average college football quarterback numbers, but he
He
did.
was consistent.
Yeah, he did it. He did his job. He went to Florida State, and obviously last year he was bad, and that was a hard pill to swallow because I do like him. He's a strong arm quarterback. I hate Florida State, but I wish the best for him. Obviously, he's not going to play a lick of down of football in LA because you have Justin Herbert. If anything, you're going to be a backup, probably a third stringer practice squad guy. Like you're going to be very low. Uh, but yeah, I mean that's where it just shows that stars don't matter. That dude was a 5-star recruit. Cam Ward was a 0-star recruit. They had to go Division 2, and he was the first overall pick. So, um, and now getting into some of this drama, obviously everybody's talking about it, so we have to talk about it, right? Adam, your boy Shadur Sanders goes from he was supposed to go to the New York Giants. The New York Giants select Jackson Dart instead of Shadur Sanders. Obviously, he starts falling down. Prank calls start coming in. Everybody's the ESPN Mel Kiper. I think I could
Right.
just go on ESPN and just say whatever the hell I want, and I could probably make millions too. Like I don't get what this toupee wearing Squareface is talking about. Like he did the same thing with Manziel. He thought Jimmy Clausen was going to be an all star. Like as much as I like Jimmy
Blaine
Clausen,
Gabbert would be better than Cam Newton.
yeah, he said he was going to be better than. Yeah, like come on. Lamar Jackson should probably move to wide receiver. But what is you being the Browns fan and that quarterback right now? You have Joe Flacco, Deshaun Watson, Dylan Gabriel, and Shadur Sanders. 2 rookie draft picks. I'm never usually a fan of taking 2 quarterbacks in the same draft. Because I think it just kind of luckily worked out for Kirk Cousins. Because if RG3 never would have got hurt, he probably would be unemployed. But what are your thoughts on the Shadur Sanders saga? Being the Browns
Well,
fan.
if you look at it from the point of value from a fifth round pick, I mean, you got to love it, right? This guy was graded as a first round pick. When the mock drafts first started coming out, it was Cam Ward or Shador, who's going to be the first quarterback off the board, And then it slowly started, okay, maybe he can fall to the Saints. All right, well, maybe he'll fall to Pittsburgh at 22 or 26 or whatever it was. So, in the aspect of value for a fifth round pick, you have to love it. The talent is there. I think he has all the talent in the world. He's not as mobile as he should be. I think he had like negative 50 rushing yards last year, but um, there's he his ego is one of his big things. Ethan, you said it. It was only the Browns that would take two quarterbacks in a draft, but I think Dion is probably going to play a big part in why Shador had such a downfall. You guys know it, or anytime if you have a kid in sport or your parents are in the bleachers and they're just saying this, that, and the other, it's like just let him play, man. Just let him play. What Shador needs to do is just he needs to grow a pair and tell his dad, just let me play. Just take a back seat. I don't need you chiming in. The Browns will start 2-4, and he's going to be saying, "All right, put him in, put him in. It's his time to shine." Just let him have his own life. He's probably lived an umbrella life, right? Dion's probably a helicopter parent, and he's lived under his roof for the past whatever X amount of years. So I think he Dion just needs to let go and just let his son live his own life and have his own career. I think he got into Cleveland yesterday, the day before. He's already been doing workouts and some other stuff. So his ego is one thing. I think this draft for him falling all the way down to the fifth round, I think it's very humbling in itself, right? I think it obviously caught a lot of people by storm, but um, it's just yeah, like you said, with these draft experts saying he was going to be a first round pick, and then I think a reason why he didn't get picked up in the second and third round is like I said, he's probably the worst backup you can have, not in terms of play, but in terms of his ego and what surrounds him. Right? Like I said, as soon as the Browns are 0-4 or whatever it is, people are going to be barking to let him play. Dion's going to be chiming in. Dion came out and said that months ago he didn't want him playing for the Browns or the Giants or whatever other teams on a talk show. So and I think that's why he fell all the way to the fifth round. The reports I've read, all the meetings between Stefanski and Andrew Berry with Shador went very well. They had multiple meetings. There was, I think, at his pro day, the Browns had the most personnel there on the ground to watch his pro day. So, and with the whole thing of them not looking enthusiastic when they picked him, I know Kevin Stefanski said, well, the video is like different than the audio or whatever. That's why I don't know. I think the call probably came from Haslam upstairs to draft Shador. I don't know if this was Stefanski's and Barry's first pick, but like I said, in value, you have to love it. Um, and like I said to start the show, he's somehow leading all rookies in jersey sales, and this is something I tell people at work is all the people that are hopping on the Shador bandwagon and because they feel bad for him and there was some injustice, he was being blackballed by the NFL. You just stop. Just stop. You're making a fool of yourself. You want to claim it's X, Y, and Z. Oh, it's his. It's this, it's that. People say, but Johnny Manziel. Johnny Manziel had all this stuff going around him. Okay, let's look at Johnny Manziel. Right. So in his first year, had 3,400 yards, 24 touchdowns. Um, had a Heisman winning year, upset number one Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Um, SEC Freshman of the Year, Davey O'Brien Award winner, 77th recipient of the Heisman Trophy, and then he beat Texas A&M 41-13. Um, in the Cotton Bowl, right? 516 yards of offense. Came back for another year, 4,100 yards, 37 touchdowns, ran for 750, 9 rushing touchdowns. So over 2 years, he had almost 10,000 yards, 93 scores, and then he was fifth in the Heisman finalist voting his second year at A&M. So put my phone in. I think I'm losing juice here. But so you can't compare him to Johnny Manziel when Johnny Manziel had twice the career that Shador did. So there's this whole stigma of, well, oh, but Johnny was this, he was doing all this stuff. But yeah, Johnny was probably a top 5 all time player in college football, right? And Shador is a mediocre quarterback, 12-13 record, and 0-1 in bowl games. So I also think the jersey retirement was idiotic and not needed. Travis Hunter, I somewhat get. He won a Heisman. His number would eventually be retired in the stadium at some point later down the road. But for Shador to have his jersey retired when he did absolutely nothing to Warner that, I I don't understand that at all, and I think that kind of hurt his draft stock as well.
Well, and this is the thing with the Shadur Sanders thing, right? Adam, you pulled my card already because this is what I keep hearing. What about Johnny Manziel? What about Baker Mayfield? Do your homework. Do your freaking homework. Johnny Manziel changed the landscape of college football. These are if you go to anybody, I call them sports ball guys. You know, like the people that think it's funny to be like, "Yay, sports ball!" Whenever you're watching football. Again, they don't know anything about it. Your sports ball guys, if you say Johnny Football, they're like, oh yeah, Johnny Manziel. Like he is a household name. He changed football. He changed the entire landscape of Texas A&M. I mean, he's the reason why they had a multi-million-dollar stadium renovation. We won't run down his numbers, but let's see here. Don't first and foremost, don't ever disrespect a Heisman Trophy winner. A Heisman Trophy winner. Shadur Sanders, you finished eighth. Sit down. Second of all, yes, he had his off the field issues. Johnny Manziel did, but there was really nothing ever. Like he was on time at the combine. His draft meetings weren't the greatest, but they weren't terrible. I mean, he knew what he needed to say. I mean, he was in there probably at that point just telling people what they wanted to hear, because he was so high. And like Baker Mayfield, again, you're gonna compare Shadur Sanders to a Heisman Trophy winner? Are you gonna? That's one. If I'm Baker Mayfield, shut your mouth. You don't know anything about football. You want to bring my name and Shadur Sanders at the college level. So a little bit of stat. You want again doing homework. Um, Shadur Sanders threw the ball 477 times last year. I think something like that. Over 13 games, it averages out to 36.6 or something. We'll round up to 40. You threw the ball 40 freaking times a game, son. You better put up numbers. You better. And in the Big 12. All right. And then also, too, let's think about this. Johnny Manziel went to the Cotton Bowl and smacked Oklahoma in front of 100,000 at Jerry World. And as a redshirt freshman, oh, by the way, the first ever freshman to win the Heisman. Again, don't ever disrespect that again. That's crazy to me. That's just crazy. You're going to draw that comparison. Baker Mayfield goes to the Rose Bowl against Georgia. And that was the beginning of the Georgia, if you want to call it a dynasty, and goes back and forth and forces overtime and Georgia to beat them in overtime. Undefeated in the Red River rivalry. What what are you, there is zero that not even in the same stratosphere. Johnny Manziel having his off the field stuff, Baker Mayfield doing his off the field antics, and Shadur Sanders, two completely different stratospheres of play. Because this is the thing, at the end of the day with the Giants, Brian Daboll, this is it for him. And if he drafts Shadur Sanders and it doesn't work out, and he knows, like you said, Adam, he's been playing daddy ball since high school. So put my boy in, put my boy in. Look, man, maybe you don't have the pull you think you had in the NFL, Dion, because look what happened. Nobody wants to deal with that. And also, this is the other thing too, right? I'm not getting into any of the political stuff, that RG3 was getting into. We're not a political podcast, but this is the thing, right? When you look at the real world and you show up to a job interview and you get given something, some research about the company, and they email it to you before you get there, and they're like, "Hey, you'll review this," and they ask you questions about it. You don't know anything about it, then you cop an attitude, and you got really strong cologne on, and you're bumping Young Jeezy in your headphones, and you're sitting back like, "Well, if you ain't trying to change the culture, don't draft me." How does that look? That's not confidence. That's just being a dick. I'm sorry. You're just being a fuckhead. And it's like, are you fucking serious? I'm taking time out of my day to come and talk to you. And you think you're better and bigger than this team, me, the organization, the league? No. You can go back to whatever hole you came out of, sit there and think about this. And when you're drafted in the fifth round, hey, don't come fucking crying. Because this is the other thing, like, oh, well, Cam Ward just submitted and went in there. No, Cam Ward went in there and understood. It's a game. Play the game. The Giants gave you a how to prepare for a football game and you didn't want to do it. And you like Like the article I read, he rolled in there, music playing through his headphones, cologne super strong, and then was like basically kind of blew off Brian Dayball. Like, well, why would I wouldn't do this? I just ball out. Buddy, you played basically FCS. HBCU football is FCS football. It's like I would say it's like the NAI of Division One. And
Mm.
then you went to Colorado, went 4-8, and your first season when you went 4-8, you got spanked after starting 4-0. Spanked, dude. You let Stanford come back. USC had zero defense, but at one point in that game, it was 49-10. You were getting absolutely destroyed, buddy. And then you had to sit out the last two games of the year. Washington State had a heyday with you. Arizona had a heyday with you. And then the next season, you barely beat North Dakota State. You go to Nebraska and fucking spanked. What are we acting this way for? I don't get it. So I'll round it out with this. I think he got a little bit of taste of reality with that of it doesn't matter who you are. If you're going to walk in and waste my time, I'm going to waste yours. It's the same thing with Aaron Rodgers, Ethan. And before we get to your point, when Aaron Rodgers was upset that, oh, the Jets flew me all the way out here from California to say we're going in a different direction. You know why they did that? Because you wasted their time for 2 years. So now I'm going to waste yours because you think you're untouchable. Well, hey, come on out here. We're going to have a meeting. Hey, sit on down, Aaron. All right, we're going to go in different directions. You have any questions? All right, sweet. Meeting's over, dude. That's the way it works. Reality hit. I'm sorry. Ethan, go ahead. You can take it away.
Well, I'll start out. I think the Aaron Rodgers thing too, Sean, piggyback, probably to make sure he got the point was across. Like, we're done. We're breaking up with you in person. We're not going to do this over text. No, Shador. So with quarterback, we've talked about this quite a bit, even back when it was the 3-Man Huddle podcast. Quarterback at certain levels, you can kind of hide a little bit if it's a system. They tailored the system at Colorado for him. You throw the ball that many times a game, of course, you're going to put up numbers. Obviously, you can throw that many and go have like 2 completions. But what people seem to forget is he was also surrounded by a very good receiving core, and you had Travis Hunter to throw at. You're going to go to the Browns where you'll have Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku. I don't know if Harold Fannin will work out, if their O-line's dinged up. You hit on it, Sean, the pre-draft stuff. That's a job interview. They give you. So I sent that clip in our group message. I've heard this before. They do this. Every team will, with quarterbacks or any player, they bring you in and they don't necessarily show your highlights from college. They show when you're fucking up, and they want you to explain. Hey, walk me through why you went. Why you threw the ball right when you were reading, and clearly you had whoever on the left that was beaten, and you didn't go that way. And apparently he kind of threw a fit with that. Well, you have to expect, especially as a rookie, you are probably going to suck your first couple weeks. It is very, very rare for you to come out and be good. Look at the rookies last year. Look at all 3 of them. And then once the guy in New England started, it took them a little bit to get going. By the end of the year, yeah, Caleb Williams looked pretty good. Jaden Daniels looked pretty good. Bo Nix looked pretty good. But those first couple weeks, it's like, holy cow. How is his ego going to handle that? And you're given a game day prep, like with the Giants, that was probably your chance to be a top 5 pick. And like you said, Sean, Dable's on his last leg. At the end of the day, it's not just you, like your livelihood. It's a coach and a coach's family and assistant coaches and trainers and everything else. Because when coaches get fired and GMs get fired, everybody's gone. That is how many coaches, how many families and all that stuff. Their livelihood is now gone and they have to find somewhere else to go. So they have to be smart, and that is probably why they stuck with Russell Wilson and are going with Jameis Winston and Tommy DeVito. You know what you're going to get from those players. You do not know what you're getting from Shedeur Sanders. Now, I'll say this. A couple of years ago when Deion went to Colorado, I kind of wanted to believe in him. They're kind of coming off playing the bad guy a little bit. But then reality started kicking in, and then they kept running their mouth, and they kept getting their ass whooped. And it's just like you're trying to act like, Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State, and Michigan, like all the big the big dogs, but you're not doing anything. the thing with Shador, watching him play, this is what I've seen, and Mel Kiper would probably sit there and say, I don't know what I'm talking about. I know I'm not an expert, but I just go off of what I see. He does not have a very strong arm. He holds the ball a lot and takes a lot of sacks. Granted, yeah, Colorado's O line was hot dookie. I think NCAA 25's O linemen are better than Travis Hunter's. And for those of you who play the game, you'll know that O linemen in that game are horrible, even if they're 99 overall. But he holds the ball and he tries to go for the deep shot. You will not be able to do that in the NFL. Even in a very pass heavy time, you're going to have to go your check down. You're going to have to go short. You're going to have to make the plays and rely on a running game because that is how pro football is played. That is how football in reality is played. Colorado didn't have a running back go for over 300 yards. You want to compare him to Cam Ward? Yeah. I mean, I think we've all seen the video of Cam sitting there just cooking up on him. Most of your completions came from checkdowns. If I did that, I would have a 90% completion. And then Shador is too busy worried about, oh, let's make a song. Cam Ward, I'm a football player. Cam Ward is a professional. They said it. Like, you watched him in his interview and everything. The dude has his head squared on straight. No one's being loud and obnoxious. Like, he's there to be, like, you're going to be the franchise quarterback. You know this is what you have to present to the public. Now, behind closed doors and everything, you can do whatever else. But, like, going into the job that you want, yeah, he acts like a pro. He goes through the pregame prep that they give you. He probably was able to explain all the crappy plays that were thrown his way and not get upset like we heard Shador did. Not build a legendary thing with hats and like writing and everything like Shador did. You know exactly what I'm talking about there, Sean. Dion, by the way, needs to worry about coaching his team too, because from what I've heard, they're losing a lot of people in the transfer portal again. He's probably having an identity crisis. He doesn't know who to pick as his favorite players anymore. He doesn't have his boys around. It wouldn't surprise me that here in a year or two he tries to go up and be in the NFL with him. I said, anyway, I'm kind of mentally like all over the place here. I've had a lot of time to think about this. I'll close out with my little review of what I kind of felt Shador was. I mean, yeah, this year he could have been a first round pick, but it's your attitude. We talked about this before a couple weeks ago, like when we were giving our example for college coaching. If we're drafting the three of us and someone comes in and acting like that, are we going to want to take anybody like that? I'll risk it for Jackson Dart, who I'm not that high on, but yeah, someone we can have sit behind what we have and learn. Like, I'd rather do that. Watching Shador, though, like I said, his arm's not that great. I've said this before a lot of times. You want guys to make those plays when the game matters. I only remember him doing that when they played Baylor. When it came time, Kate, you have to score a touchdown here to go overtime, and he did it. Like, that is what I remember. Like, you watch Cam Ward. Miami was good because of Cam Ward. How many games would they be down in, and he would single-handedly bring them back? Sean, you saw it when you went to the Cal
I
game.
was at
That was
one, and
Cam Ward.
one of them I was in person at.
Yeah, obviously, yes, their defense stepped up. Their defense is better than Colorado's, which is sad because I don't think Miami even fielded a defense last year. It was just 11 like imaginary like AI guys out there. But anyway, we'll cover that in the coming weeks. Shador didn't do that. It was just him flashing, saying, "Look at my AP," and Travis Hunter walking around with his girlfriend that's hanging around on another dude, him being in denial. And then you'd see in interview, like press conferences with his dad, like then just gassing him up like he's the greatest thing ever. So I think, Sean, you're probably right where he's stepping out into reality a little bit, where it's like, if you want this, you have to try. It is not just going to be given to you. And now you're going to the Browns, who historically are not great, and go through quarterbacks like toilet paper. And if you want to be the guy, you have to make this work. Do I think he could do it? I think so. He's got to get over his whatever the hell he has going on. Anyway, I've kind of rambled there. It's probably been 10 minutes. I apologize. Like I said, it was somebody that a couple of years ago I thought could be good. I remember watching him at when he was in the FBS, and I was like, oh, he's not too bad. But then gets to Colorado, and it's like, I mean, he's okay. I wouldn't say he's any better than anybody else.
Like, can you hear him? It's
Ready?
so with Shador, I think that reality did kick in a bit. But like I said, that interview with Shannon Sharp and Johnny Manziel, you guys both have seen it. And Johnny
Mhm.
Manziel told Shannon Sharp, "What if I told you that I didn't love the game enough to be where I was supposed to be?" And I think that's a reality that Shador needs to come to. Um, are you willing to do what an NFL quarterback is willing to do? Because if you're not, you're going to end up like John. That's the only comparison I'll give you with Johnny Manziel. Because, like I said, that's a huge disrespect to Johnny Manziel and Baker Mayfield, even throwing them in the same conversation. Not even same stratosphere of college players.
I'll
Um,
throw this out there, Sean. That's a good point. Look at all the greats:
mhm,
Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, even Eli.
mhm,
How obsessive they are, and how you'd listen to them like the offseason. Peyton would go and throw 1,000 passes a day.
mhm,
Brady working out, being in insanely good shape. Like, I just don't. I guess I don't personally know Shador, but from what I've gathered, just listen to him talk, I don't see him being that dedicated. Football's just been something that's provided for him in his life. It's
mhm,
never been like it's been easy for him, basically. Now you're in a point where you're playing against guys who this is their livelihood. Coaches, this is their livelihood. It's
mhm.
not a. I mean, it's a game, but it's a lot of money is involved now.
Yep. But I think this is a good place. The NFL draft wrapped up. I think it's a good place to end this show on. In the coming weeks, we'll have a couple. We got some interest. These dog days of football are going to be coming up, but the players always seem to be in the news for something. Um, so we'll be covering all things leading up to OTAs. Rookie mini camp is coming up. So Adam, we'll toss it over to you. Any closing thoughts on draft week, the Browns, anything?
I saw Henry Ruggs. I think is getting out of prison in the next 30 days or something like that. So hopefully he steps nowhere near a football field because that is just unjust to the family. With what happened there.